Okay, so if you've been following my YouTube channel, you know that lately I've been working on the Tesla Torch. It's a super quick charge flashlight, and I've been selling the prototypes over at teslamaker.com, and we're starting to get to the point where this is going to move from the prototype stage to more of a production ready stage. So at this point I want to release the how to build video. Now this light has gone through a lot of revisions. You know, thanks to 3D printing I've been able to super rapidly make changes, improve the prototypes, and you know, I've been selling the prototypes as well, so that funds the continued development. And now at this point I'm ready to release the parts list, the 3D part files as they stand, and I would encourage replication, and I'd really encourage anybody that makes improvements to feel free to share them back with myself and everybody else so that we can continue to improve this beyond the current level. Okay, so after going through all of those previous revisions and design changes, we are now up to this on the Tesla Torch. And I am just really excited to share this. This is got all the latest improvements, and the 3D case design has a nice switch action now. It's about as portable as you can get. You know, this is a battery-free. This runs on a supercapacitor, battery-free, almost instant charge flashlight. For every second of charge, it gives you about a minute of runtime, and I pretty much say that in about 30 seconds it pretty much charges the supercapacitor to maximum. So probably about the maximum runtime you get out of this is about 30 minutes. I've actually seen it run quite a bit longer than that, but it's at a very low dim level. So anyway, definitely excited to share this. Let's go through the build video and we'll go from there. Okay, so the first step will be to download and print the 3D files. There's a left half and a right half. You can find the files at laserhacker.com. Follow the link in the video description to download the files. Now, for those who do not own a 3D printer, stay tuned. In the future, I'm going to release a version of the Tesla Torch that does not require a 3D printer. You'll either be laser cut, or if you own a jigsaw, or you could even cut it out with a handsaw. So that'll be the version for those who do not have a 3D printer, but for those who own a 3D printer, try out the 3D files. I've designed them to print on as many 3D printers as possible. So try it out. If you have any issues with the 3D file, let me know, and we'll try to continue to improve it. Okay, so one of the first things we do, one of the first steps, is to take a 5mm drill bit. So put down a board to protect the top surface here on this. Okay, so you can now see that we've drilled this out to fit the LEDs. So the next step will be to glue the LEDs to the lens here. So we'll mix up some JB Quick. Okay, so I'm just going to put the smallest amount of JB Quick around the bottom of the LED here. You don't want to put it on the back of the LED across the legs, because I don't know this for certain, but I think JB Quick is probably conductive. So I don't want it to touch anywhere between those legs. So that looks about right. And then, now you'll notice on the legs there's a long leg and a short leg, and you want to make sure that you line all these up correctly. So I'm going to put the short leg on these against the wider opening here on the back of the lens. You can see how one side is wider than the other. So the important thing is that you just line them all up straight. Okay, there's a little bit of a case prep that we have to do here. These holes, depending on your 3D printer settings, tend to be a little tight on the screw head. They tend to not fit in there. So either I have to open up the 3D model or find a screw with a slightly smaller head, which is kind of what I'm looking for now. But in the meantime, I just need to widen the holes just a tad. And to do that, I'm using a 4.2mm drill bit. And the most important point at this step is that I want to run the drill bit in reverse. Otherwise it will bite, dig through, and there's a little inset area down here that holds the screw. You'll destroy all of that. So run your drill in reverse, and you can widen these holes right out, and you'll feel it go down and hit the inset and stop. So that's all there is to it. So you can see now that we've done that, the screws fit right down in there, and they hit the inset area at the bottom and stop. So that accomplished exactly what we wanted it to. Okay, one other thing I should point out is that the left half of the case has a very nice rounded edge, and it's very comfortable in your hand, especially if you're right-handed when you hold to crank it. Now the right side of the case has a much sharper edge, and originally I did not have the case designed that way, but in the end I had to put this sharper edge so that 3D printers could print this side without using support material, so you could put it down on a bed. And I did that so that a majority of 3D printers could print these files without any issue. Now the edge is a little bit, it's kind of a 90-degree, it's just a little bit sharp, so if you want to just take a knife or some sandpaper and just go over this edge. That's already about right there. Just give it a tad bit of chamfer around the edge of the light. Okay, so I've got an 11mm drill bit, and I want to make sure that these holes don't have any rough portions so that the lens can slide in here easily. So again, I'm running the drill bit in reverse. A little trick for working with ABS plastic. Okay, so we're ready to put the LEDs inside the light case. And the only thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of glue around the outside of the lens here. Just a few drops, just to help anchor it in. And there is one really important step. You don't want to miss this. These LEDs need to connect in series, so you want to line them all up the same direction. Now to do that, we're going to put the short leg, you can see there's a longer leg and a shorter leg on the LED. The shorter leg is going to be facing down toward the bottom of the case. That's important, so let me line it up here where you can see it in the camera. Shorter leg here, going down. Alright, so we line it up like that. Now these are a really tight fit. In fact, they probably don't even need the glue. So usually what I do is, if you're on a wood surface like this, you just kind of line it up and press fit it down into there. So let me see here. It's a little too angled, so it's not going in. There we go. So again, important thing, short leg, and I can see I did it correctly here. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus on this. So that we got the longer leg on the top, shorter leg on the bottom. And the lens is press fit right down there flush. So we'll go ahead and put in the next lenses. Okay, so we followed the same rule. On this one, shorter leg pointing down toward the bottom of the case. And as you come out here on this edge, you're going to want to support the plastic here so that you don't crack this off right here. So you can see we got those two are now in nice and flush. Lower leg facing down. And there we have it. So we've got our three LEDs with the reflectors all lined up. Now we'll need to connect these in series and solder on a lead wire onto the bottom one here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to connect these LEDs in series, solder them up, and leave a lead wire down here in the first bottom LED, and that's just because there's no other way to access it once we build this up. Okay, so we want to cut a single wire, and we're going to make it about 2.5 inches long. And this wire is going to connect down here on the first leg of the bottom LED. And that will just allow us to connect these up correctly later. So if you don't wire this on first, you're going to not be able to access this LED, and you won't even be able to fix it. So let me show you how I connect these LEDs in series. Basically what we want to do is we want to bend this leg over, and this will be a leg that we connect to. So on this side we've got this outer leg coming over, then we're going to have this one coming down and connecting to this one in series. Same with this one. So let me go ahead and bend these down flat, and I will solder these, and hopefully I can get a nice close-up shot in the camera and show you how this all connects. Let me go ahead and clip these off now, and I think it will become a little more obvious. Let's see if we can focus in this close. There we go. Alright, so that's all ready to solder. Now what we've got here is we've got the first one, which was a short leg. The long leg comes over and is going to connect to this short leg. Same here. So I need to solder here, and then I need to connect this wire down here. So let me go ahead and solder the first two. Okay, so you can see here that I've soldered this one and this one over here. So we've got the short leg over on this side, coming over, soldering into this LED, coming over here and soldering into this one, and then exiting with the long leg that was over here. So now I just need to solder this wire onto this inside lead, and we'll be done with this portion. I'm going to keep the connection fairly short back there because we're going to have to bend this over around the charging crank handle. All the fit and tolerances inside this case are really tight, so you don't want to do sloppy work inside here anywhere. Okay, so we've got a nice solid solder connection there. Last step here, I'm going to take some heat shrink tube. I'm going to slide a piece of heat shrink tubing down over this and butt it up against the LED. Use the heat gun and it'll just shrink that tubing down. Okay. So that's it for this step. We'll leave this just exiting here for now, and we're ready to go on to the next step. Okay, so now we want to get the hand crank put down in here into its little place. Now we're going to glue that in with this white Gorilla Glue. This is a little faster than the standard Gorilla Glue. You could use this standard stuff, it just takes a lot longer to dry. I really like this, and we just wet down this area a little bit, you'll see the step. I like the way this glue foams up and swells and supports the parts. So anyway, that's the glue we'll be using. Now first of all, we're going to have to take this little guy apart. So let me show you what I've got here. I've got a 1/16 inch punch. And what we need to do is we need to punch this little pin right here out. So let me see if I can focus in on this. Now on one side, this little pin will be flush, and on the other side it's going to be inset, and that's the side we need to punch on. So let me get my rubber mallet here. And you want to support it on the other side, so I'm just going to use this piece of wood here to support it. So I can feel that it slid through, and now you can see that that's coming out. Alright, so we set this aside, you don't want to lose the pin, and now this all comes apart. Now, earlier we have this little wire here, and we just want to bend it over gently because you don't want to displace your LED, but we just want to get it out of the way there a little bit. And now this goes into here like this, and fits right into that cavity. Should fit perfectly, and should line up here on this side as well. So anyway, that's the basics there. I'm going to just bend this little wire lead over into this cavity here. So that's where you want that wire to run. You want this in here. So now what I'm going to do, and spraying this with a little misted water just kind of activates the Gorilla Glue. So I'm just going to mist that inside cavity. Now when you put down this glue, you don't want to get glue too close to the area here at this hole where the crank handle, because this glue really foams up. So if you get glued close to the hole here, it's going to spill out all around this crank handle area, and you don't want that. Where you really want the glue is over here on the edges, where it supports into the edge material a little bit right through there. Some on this edge, a little bit on this edge. And then I will take one of these little sticks and just kind of work this around a little bit. Now if some of the glue does flare out onto the area here that rotates, it's okay, because you can just rotate this piece around and that will break it loose. But anyway, here we go. Let's put this down into here, and that's it. So
You want to make sure it's sitting flush here, which it is, and then we just set this aside. You don't want to set it down on this, or that's going to displace it up and it won't sit flush, but this board is very convenient in that it has a little hole drilled here, so I can just set that right there like that. Alright, so we'll come back and check on that in a little bit. So you can see that some of the foam is starting to foam up around here, and that will set and lock that in really tight and nice. One thing I need to point out is that you do not want any of these leads from the LEDs to touch the metal casing on this motor, and that's one of the reasons we bent them over flush and soldered them down the way they did. So you can see there's a lot of clearance, nothing's touching there, but that is a point that you want to make sure that you keep enough room between those points. Okay, so now we're going to wind the coil. So I don't know if you're going to hand wind these or exactly what method you're going to use, but I've sanded down the threads on this bolt so that I can slide this on, and about the point where it starts to hold tight, I just stop, and I just put this in a cordless drill with a variable speed control. And the important thing on this video right now is that we are winding this way. So you want this winding back toward yourself, and that's going to be important for the connections on this. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark these connections. So I'm going to come here on my wire, and I'm going to put a piece of Scotch tape out here, and I'm going to label these, and I'll leave a little bit so we can solder on to the end here, strip the enamel off, but I'm going to label these. So this one I'm going to label A. So we got an A mark there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this back on itself. And we're going to really make a nice tight bend there. And that will connect right on here, and then as we wind, that will automatically hold. We don't need to use the clamps like I did in my previous video. So we're going to come down one layer. And back up to the top. There's a little loop here in my wire I need to get out. Now when you come back up to the top, you can see that this wire exits here. We want to go back around to the other side, and we want to come out on this side. So we've gotten that set up correctly. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bend this one back this way, and then I'm going to label it and mark it. Okay, so we've stopped. We're bending this one back this way. We're going to clip it off here, and I'm going to just make one more label on it, similar to the other one. We're going to label this one B. So we have A and B on this side. Now we're going to come along here. We're going to start on our other side, and we're going to label this first one C. Okay, so come up here with C. Bend the rest of these out of the way here a little bit. Alright, so on this layer, you just want to fill the bobbin up to the top. And it's important that you keep nice flat layers top to bottom here in this process. So one of those messed up here a little bit. Okay, so C started on the bottom side here, and we're going to exit out over in this side right here. Now at this point, I have a hot glue gun here ready, because on this one it's going to want to unwind on the coil, But what I can do is I can touch some, you don't want to put a lot of hot glue on here because you got to fit this inside the ferrite, but you can just put a touch of hot glue along here, get enough to hold the wire down, and then I usually take my thumb and just slide it off so it's smooth, and make sure you'll have no issue fitting this down inside the ferrite. So we'll mark this one D, and that'll be it. Okay, so in the end you should have a bobbin with marks on the wire. There are A, B, C, and D. Let me just take this off here, and there we go. Okay, so at this point I went over and checked the case, and you can see that this foam glue has just foamed up all over, and it did foam a little bit over here. Now it's really easy to remove at this point. Now if you let this sit a lot longer it may be harder, but at this point, you know, a few minutes into setting up, I can just remove it like that. So anyway, this is really set in there nicely. Alright, let's continue on with the bobbin. Okay, so on this bobbin, I'm not going to use a bolt to hold the bobbin together. I'm actually going to super glue it together. Now to do that, I just basically put super glue on one side of the ferrite, and I put it right along the top edge up here. And I do think that this ferrite core performs better without the steel bolt on the inside. I haven't done a lot of testing to verify that, but it seems to me to be the case. So anyway, I've got the glue there on that side. I put it down over this. Now at this point I am going to go ahead and use the bolt, and it's just to squeeze it together tight while the glue sets. And this is actually fairly important because you're not going to be able to bolt this and fit it in the case. This coil goes down in the case, and the ferrite pot core sits in a little 3D printed cavity, and it's a pretty tight fit, so you're really going to have to set this and super glue it and then remove the bolt and put it in the case. So anyway, we'll let this sit for a while, come back to that. Okay, so the next step is to strip the enamel off the wire and support the wire. Really press down the wire here. You don't want to be pulling against the bobbin when you do this. But what I did is I just take a knife blade and just scrape off the layer of enamel. So basically I just have to rotate the wire around and scrape it off on all sides. Now if you get solderable magnet wire, you won't have to do this step. But I'm recycling wire from other projects, and because of that I have to strip it manually like this. Okay, so you can see that we've stripped off a portion of the wire, and now we just really want to solder this like that. You can see it took the solder very nicely. So this one I'm having a little bit more trouble with, so I'm going to go ahead and really heat it up and rub the soldering iron on it there. Now it's nice and shiny. Alright, so that one's good. Okay, so we're ready to go ahead and connect the crank handle back on here. And one of the first steps is to take this little pin that was in there and to line the hole back up vertically this way, so that when you put the handle on, this pin will fit back in there. When you pound it out the pin, it creates one side on this that's a little rougher than the other. That's usually the side that the pin entered through. You can see there's a flange here in the pin, and that needs to pound back down into that shaft. So anyway, we line this up on here, and you slide this pin down. Now if you push this in too far, it's not going to fit. If you lift it up too far, it's not going to fit. What I found helps me find where it goes is just to lightly tap it, and it'll kind of find its own position. There we go. So you can see that through that tapping we brought it all the way back down to there. And that's about right to get the hole punch and to punch it the rest of the way in. Alright, so that's it, and crank is done. Okay, so at this step we want to put in the switch, and we'll need to do some prep on that to put some wires on here. So we'll go ahead and get the switch set up, and it's going to need to set right in here. So you can see that we can't come out here long and sloppy with our wiring. We're going to have to stay tight and close as we do on this whole build. But anyway, we'll go ahead and get this switch set up. So for the switch, I'm going to take 2 wires. I'm going to cut them to about 3 inches long and strip the ends here. Just very short stripping again because we don't want a lot of slop. So I'm going to strip no more than an 1/8 inch off the ends in these wires here. Put a little solder on there. Pre-soldering the wires really helps everything go together better. So, all right. Now what we really want to do is we want to connect these wires to the 2 pins at the front, and that will be your on position. You push forward to go on, back to go off. So we're going to take the back pin here and clip it out, and we're just going to leave the 2 front pins. So back pin is clipped off, 2 front pins are left. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten these pins, and we're going to be soldering our wires to the top. So we're going to shorten the pins to about here. You know, we're just going to leave about a, I don't know, again, you don't want much more than 1/8 of an inch on those pins. And we'll pre-solder these here just a little bit. Okay, so you can see that we've soldered the 2 wire leads onto here. There's good strong solder connections there, and yet it's small enough in sticking out the back here that it's not going to hit anything along that line. Now there's some 3D printed inset grooves here, and you can widen those if need be after you've soldered this, and I do need to widen one of them to kind of hold and support these leads coming off the switch. There, that insets right down into there now. So anyway, we'll move on to putting in some of the other larger internal components at this point. Okay, so it's time to glue in some of the internal components, and again we're just going to lightly mist the interior. And the first thing I'm going to start with here is the on and off switch. And again, this is that expanding foam glue, so you want very little, just a small drop in there, or this is going to just expand out all over the place, make a big mess. Yeah, it's important that the switch sit vertically. You don't want to angle this way or that way, so press it down, make sure you get a nice solid fit down in the cavity that's printed there for that switch. Okay, so now let's put in the transformer. Now the transformer has a little cavity that slides into right here. Now in order to get it down in, you're going to have to take the wire with the A label and bend it back down here like this. And that will just allow it to slip into place. It's a pretty tight fit. But if you rock it back this way, let me see if you can, let me zoom this in so you can see what I'm doing. So rock it back this way, and then you can push this down and under there, and then it just kind of slides into position, which it just did. The next thing we're going to want to do is glue in our supercapacitor, and it's going to sit right here. And one of the things I always do in these at this point is to clip their legs down to about half their existing height. There we go. And we got this bar here that marks the negative side. I put the negative toward the front of the flashlight. It's important to take note on that. So I put a little more glue than normal in this step because I really want it to foam up and support this capacitor, and I put a little bit here. Anyway, there we go. And then you just set this into position and let it sit for a while, come back to it later. This glue will foam all up around this capacitor and support it in place. Okay, so it's time to wire up the transistor. And the way these transistors work, these MPS-A18s, if you put the flat face facing you, so they have a rounded back, but put the flat face with the writing on it facing you, you've got your emitter, your base, and your collector. So your collector on the right, the emitter on the left, and the base. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire 3 wires onto the base, and we'll start with that. So we'll take these 3 wires, they're about 2 inches long, and I've already stripped them here. So we just twist this around, and we go ahead and put some solder on that. Let me just clamp this up here to make this a little bit easier. There we go. So yep, we'll solder these 3 wires to the base. Okay, now I'm going to mark one of these wires as the collector. Just put a little piece of tape on there and mark this one as the collector. This is one step that's pretty important. If you get this messed up, you're going to probably burn out your transistor and nothing's going to work right. So line up on this is pretty critical. You don't want any sharp pieces of solder on these because you're going to be heat shrinking these. So there's your collector. We'll do the emitter. Oh, you know what? I forgot. I should have put the heat shrink tape. So let's put a piece of heat shrink on here first, and then solder it. Alright, so we've got our emitter here. Oh yeah, heat shrink. I remembered this time. Cut it a little smaller. Alright, so now we'll move the 2 pieces of heat shrink up here. This one bend back down, and then what we do is we take a larger piece of heat shrink and put it over the whole assembly, like this. And that makes up the majority of the wiring for the circuit. There's a little pot that we put in to adjust it later, but you got your emitter, your base lines, and your collector. So let's go wire this up in the circuit. Okay, so the next step is to set up the little pot core. Now initially, if you take a screwdriver, you can feel the ends, the limits on this. There's a limit over here, and then over here there's a limit, and it stops. You want to put this right in the middle. And that way when you start up your circuit, you will not burn it out. So we'll put that right in the middle. We're going to clip one of the legs off. We'll get that one out of here. So we've got 2 legs right in the middle. And I should say that when you clip one of the legs off, there's 3 legs on here. Let me get this down where it can focus. Okay, so there's 3 legs on here. There's the back, there's the 2 up here in the front. You can clip off either one here on the front. So when you clip the leg, make sure you don't clip the back leg off, but we'll clip off, say, this one up here in the front. That would be correct. Now what I've done is I've connected the base to the little lead that was left in the back. So after we clip this side off, there's 2 leads left. It doesn't really matter which one you connect this to. You can connect to either one, it'll work the same. But I connected the base to the one here in the back, and then I've connected another little length of wire out here that will connect up later to it and put heat shrink tape on either side. Again, it's important to make sure that you're in the middle range on this pot core at this point. So that's it. The wiring harness is ready. Let's go ahead and wire up the rest of the light. Alright, so let's start to wire this up. So I'm going to go ahead and take one lead from the switch. So we got 2 wires here coming off the switch. I'm going to take one of the leads from the switch, and it's the one closest to me, and I'm going to connect it to the negative on the supercapacitor. So I'm going to solder this to the negative terminal on the supercapacitor, just like that. Okay, so that's our first connection. switch to negative on the supercapacitor. Okay, so the next connection we're going to do will be the other side of this switch wire. So we've got it coming from the negative through the switch. We're going to come over here, and the other wire coming from the switch we're going to connect to the emitter on our wiring harness here. Now I want to put a piece of heat shrink over that, so let's do that now so we don't have to desolder and do that later. Alright. So we're going to connect the emitter to our switch. Okay, so now that we've soldered that, let's go ahead and pull the heat shrink tube up and over that connection, and we will shrink that down. Alright, so now we have our emitter connected. Let's move on to the next connection. Okay, so now we're going to connect the collector. Now the collector connects to the terminal marked A that comes out of our pot core. So we're going to take our collector, we're going to connect it to A. And let me go ahead and, you know what, I'm going to peel the tape off marking this as the collector just so I can put the heat shrink tubing over the wire. But this is the one we marked C for collector on our transistor wiring harness. We also have a C down here on the pot core, but this is the C collector from the transistor. Alright. Alright, so we're connecting our collector from our transistor to the wire marked A from the pot core. Make sure that's a good connection. Alright, so let's bring down the heat shrink and put it over that. Alright, so that takes care of our collector connection and our emitter connection. Now we have the base connections here, and we'll begin to hook these up next. Okay, so one of the base connections from the transistor we want to connect to this wire that comes up from our LEDs. Now this is the first wire that we put in on this build down that connects our LEDs in series. So we're going to take this wire, let's just cut it back here a little bit. We'll strip it. Get a little heat shrink over it. And we're going to wire this one in and connect it to one of the base lines from our transistor. So again, this is the wire that came from the LEDs, first wire that we put in on this build. Connecting to base. And put the heat shrink over it. There we go. Alright, so we take the other base connection coming off our transistor wiring harness, and we're going to connect it to the wire coming out of the pot core that's marked D. So we're going to connect up to here. Let's get that connected. Alright, connect it to the D. Okay, so that pretty much takes care of the base connections. This one here that comes to the pot, the other side of that base connection is going to connect to the battery here. So we'll take this and we'll bring it down and connect it to the positive terminal on the battery. So just like that. Alright, so that takes care of all the connections on the transistor wiring harness. Now this connector coming out of the pot core, the one marked B, it connects to the battery. So we will bring it over here, line it up, and solder that. Now that connects to the positive terminal on, I'm saying battery, I should be saying supercapacitor, sorry. That connects to the positive terminal on the supercapacitor. So you can see here that our base through the pot popped loose, but anyway. So on the positive terminal of your supercapacitor, what you should have connected is, so on the positive terminal of the supercapacitor, you should come off here, you should go to your pot for adjusting, and that should go up to the base, and then the other should come from the pot core, and it should be labeled B, and it should go over here to the positive side of the supercapacitor. So that's everything connected up now except for this one wire coming from the pot core marked C, and it comes over here to the top terminal here on the LEDs. So we'll connect that one up next. Alright, so I'm going to connect a length of wire to the LEDs here. I clipped the one LED lead off. So you can probably see down there that it's clipped off. So I got a nice solid connection in there. Alright, now let me just shorten the wire here so that it lines up here to the wire marked C from the pot core. Alright, this unit is about ready to connect up to the power supply and test it out. Alright. Okay, so there we go. Now I'm going to connect this supercapacitor up to the power supply, and I'll show you how to tune it. Okay, so we're going to want to glue the pot core down along here. And you don't want to use too much glue. If you use too much glue, you'll mess up the pot core. So just a little bit of glue and just clamp it right there like that. And that will hold it and give it some stability for adjusting it later. So glue down the pot core. Okay, so now we're going to tune for long runtime plus usable light. And to do that, we're going to go at 10 volts through my multimeter so we can measure the milliamp draw to the light. So let's turn it on now. And you can see that right now we're drawing between 4 to 5 milliamps. And if I turn the pot core counterclockwise, and it may be different on yours depending on how you wired your pot core, but if I turn counterclockwise, I can increase the milliamp draw, and if I turn it back, I can go back down. It's in the 4 milliamp range on the low end. Now, if you ran it in this configuration, you would get some usable light, and it would run a really, really long time. But we're going to turn it up higher so we can get more usable light, and we'll still get 1 minute to 2 minutes per second of charge time. So to do that, let's just adjust the pot up here. And what we're aiming for is 7 milliamps. Now it's very important that you do this on a stabilized capacitor. You know, when you do this, you want the current draw on the capacitor to be under 1 milliamp before you start tuning. Otherwise your tuning will be off. But at this point we can tune. So let's go ahead and bring the current draw up here. So you can see we're up at 5 milliamps. I'll slow down a little and let it stabilize. Okay, we're at 6. Let's let this stabilize. We're shooting for 7 milliamp current draw. So you can see we're at about 6.5 milliamps. That's just over 7. I like to be just a hair under 7. There we go. So that's what I want to shoot for, 7 milliamp current draw. So this light is now tuned. We're not going to adjust the pot core again. It's tuned perfectly. Now let's go ahead and connect up the generator portion of the circuit, and we'll finish this project up. Okay, so the first step to connecting up the generator portion will be to bend these little leads over against the plastic. There's a plastic base. You want to make sure they don't touch metal, so you want them bent over against the plastic. Now I'm going to take a diode, and you want the diode to be running from the positive here over to the cap. So we want the color band going this direction. We'll clip it off here on the back side, and we will solder this diode directly to the terminal there on the little generator. So there we go. Now we're going to take a wire. Let's clip this off at about there. And we will connect up a wire that runs over to the positive on the supercapacitor. Okay. Now we'll take a little bit of a heat shrink wrap. Alright, so again, this little red dot indicates that this is the positive side, and we come from the positive this direction over here into the positive on our supercapacitor. So, that looks about right. We'll put a little solder on the wire. And we will connect in here to the positive. Okay, so we got the positive side connected. Now we just need to come over here and connect the negative side to the negative on the supercapacitor. So let's do that. Okay, so I'll measure off some wire here. It's a little bit packed down in this area, but looks like about that long will work. And we want to connect this to the negative on the supercapacitor here. And that should be it. So we've got our positive from the generator, our negative from the generator. Everything's hooked up. On and off is working. And this is working. To verify that this is working, we'll do a voltage check real quick. Okay, so I've connected the multimeter here to the supercapacitor and I'm reading voltage. And this is just to verify that the hand crank generator is functioning. So you can see here that that charges the supercapacitor right up and the hand crank generator is functioning. So just a test on that. Okay, so it's time to screw the two halves together. Now in order to do that, we just want to bring all the excess wire carefully. You want to make sure that none of it's getting bent or crimped over too hard. We want to kind of bring it all and swirl it into the center right here. So, you can see it, we just about have it all tucked in. So we'll tuck this portion down under here. And that's looking good. So now we'll bring the case over. again, it's just important that as you work the case down into position, that you make sure there's nothing sticking up or getting caught, because it is all a very tight fit inside here. There we go. Alright, so the first two screws that you want to put in are these front ones, and that will line up the seam up here on the front. So let's start with those. And that's it. So, that is a finished Tesla torch light. Hope you enjoyed the build process, and we will put this one over here with the other finished units.